What is going on YouTube? Running Gun Sports back here with another video. Today is our college football edition of our news update / review video. But today, also at the end, we're going to be doing our top 10 preseason, very early edition of our preseason top 10. So stay tuned for that. We also just updated our NFL news edition video yesterday. So look for that in our channel. So let's get right into the video. Right off the start, 4-star wide receiver Brian Thomas Jr. commits to LSU. Number 9 wide receiver in the country commits to LSU over Bama and Texas A&M. LSU this year, very good recruiting class. With that commitment right there, it moves them up to the 3rd recruiting class in the country. Coach Orgeron, after a struggling year this year and some allegations which caused a self-imposed bowl ban this year, still recruiting very well. So we'll see what happens in Death Valley in the next coming years. Boston College running back David Bailey enters the transfer portal as a junior. His 2020 stats were 127 carries, 503 yards, and 7 touchdowns. So quite a big loss for Boston College. Hopefully they can fill in his shoes. We'll see where he goes. Not much has been said about if there's been teams in contact with him, where he'll be going, if he is going anywhere. Elijah Brown, 4-star tight end, commits to Alabama from Dayton, Ohio. Chooses Alabama over Auburn, LSU, and Notre Dame. Great addition for this Alabama team with the best recruiting class ever, according to 24/7 Sports on this year. So great addition, and Nick Saban out there doing it still after winning a national championship last year. Tyler Sowell, Oregon quarterback, enters the transfer portal. Started all games for Oregon this year, has received interest and been in contact with Penn State and Auburn to transfer there. Auburn just signed Demetrius Davis, quarterback out of North Shore, Texas. Dual threat guy, really similar styles to Lamar Jackson. So we'll see what happens if he does go to Auburn, if he goes to Penn State. Obviously, Penn State just lost Will Levis to the transfer portal as well. 5-star defensive tackle Walter Nolan announces his top 10 schools. 6'4", 300-pound. Top 10 is LSU, Bama, Clemson, Michigan, Florida, Oregon, Ohio State, Tennessee, Auburn, USC. Pro-style quarterback Malik Murphy commits to Texas. 6'5", 225 pounds. Gardena, California, class of 2022. Big pickup for Texas. Steve Sarkisian doing great things already after being the offensive coordinator for this Alabama national championship team. We saw how good that offense was this year. Texas will be a very scary team to come the next few couple of years if Steve Sarkisian can recruit as well as he's been. 4-star pro-style QB A.J. Duffy announces top 4 schools: Florida State, Michigan State, Penn State, and Oregon. He's a 6'2", 205-pound quarterback, and he is attending IMG Academy right now. Oscar Delp, a 4-star tight end from Georgia, class of 2022, announces top 13: Northwestern, Clemson, LSU, Stanford, USC, Bama, Oklahoma, Michigan, Georgia, North Carolina, Florida, South Carolina, and Auburn. Gus Malzahn is going to UCF. That's the biggest news we've seen this week. Gus Malzahn obviously fired from Auburn after a few years, beat Nick Saban 3 times. So we'll see what he can do at UCF. Obviously, UCF just lost their coach, Josh Heupel, to Tennessee. The Volunteers picked him up after Jeremy Pruitt was fired after the whole allegations, recruiting, paying players money. So we'll see what Gus Malzahn will do at UCF. They had not been very good after Scott Frost had left for Nebraska. So right now we are going to be doing our very early preseason top 10. I'll put up the graphic on your guys' screen right now. Number 1, Alabama. They got just the best recruiting class in the country and a few key players returning. Number 2, Oklahoma. Last year they went 9-2. Spencer Rattler returning. They started out struggled. They went 1-2 in their first 3 games. If they cannot get off to a slow start like last year, I think they'll have a very good shot of making the playoffs and possibly winning the national championship. Number 3, Ohio State. That had the number 2 recruiting class, a very stacked recruiting class as well. Just could not out recruit Alabama, and just very hard to out recruit Nick Saban. Number 4, Georgia. JT Daniels looked very good at the end of the season. Obviously, Georgia's 2 losses were to 2 very good teams, Alabama and Florida, 2 national championship contending teams, until Florida did lose to LSU in that very close game. But Florida and Alabama, those are two losses I'm sure Kirby Smart is okay with as long as they can win next year. They have a really good shot of making the top four. Oregon, this is a very bit of a shocker. They went 4-3 this year, but they have a very good recruiting class as well. Had more commits than Clemson did this year. Did not finish ranked. Obviously, they beat USC in the Pac-12 championship, lost in the Fiesta Bowl to Iowa State in a very close game. Their quarterback struggles at the end of the year did end up hurting them. CJ Verdell is coming back. Number 6, North Carolina. I think Sam Howell, as a junior in his junior year, will have more experience and will lead his team to very far places. He did fairly well last year, gave Notre Dame a good run for their money, a playoff team. So we'll see what they can do. I honestly think that they can make a run for the playoffs this year, and I think if they face Clemson in the ACC championship, I think they will beat them personally. Clemson, I don't really necessarily believe in DJ Uiagalelei. I just think that he's a little overhyped. He almost lost to Boston College. We'll see what he does. Obviously, I understand that he's a freshman. I think he will progress throughout training camp this year and whatnot, but I don't think he's as good as people said he was. But we'll see what he can do. Which brings me to number 7, who is Clemson. Went 10-2 last year. Losses to Notre Dame and Ohio State. Ohio State went on to play in the national championship versus Alabama, which they got destroyed in. But 2 losses to 2 playoff teams. Those are pretty strong losses for Dabo Swinney and the Clemson Tigers. Obviously recruited fairly well this year. Number 8, Miami, big shocker here. They did have a losing record last year, but D'Eriq King is coming back for an extra season due to COVID-19. All players get another year of eligibility, so we'll see what he can do. I think he could lead them very far. I think Miami and North Carolina will be the 2 front runners for the ACC, and it won't be Clemson this year, which is very surprising. And I think that's going to be a great game this year when they do face off. Obviously, this year, North Carolina absolutely walloped Miami this year in Miami Hard Rock Stadium, but I think it'll be a lot closer this year when they play. Number 9, USC, 5-1 this year, runner-up in the Pac-12. I think that they'll do very well. Keaton Slovis was a little inexperienced at the beginning of the year. The team just looked very young, but the recruiting class this year is very strong, and I think that they'll have more experience and they won't make games as close as they should have been. We saw a lot of their games last year were way too close for comfort, against teams that they easily should have beaten. Number 10, Iowa State. Last year it finished number 9 in the country after beating Oregon in the Fiesta Bowl. Finished 9-3 on the season. So that's my top 10 right now. We're going to go in a little more depth on these teams. Number 1, Alabama. Their notable returning players, John Mechie, Malachi Moore, Jaleel Billingsley. They had the number 1 recruiting class of all time. Obviously, the number 1 recruiting class this year, as you would expect. 2020, they went 13-0. They were your national champs. So great things going down in Tuscaloosa. Number 2, Oklahoma, notable returning players, Spencer Rattler, Kennedy Brooks, Jalen Redmond. Last year, 2020, they went 9-2 and beat Florida in the Cotton Bowl. Just a blowout game. No one expected that. Not a very strong recruiting class, though. Number 11 in the country. Lincoln Riley, though, I think will have a very experienced team, and I think they have a really good shot to win a national championship. Number 3, Ohio State. Obviously, Chris Olave, big news of him returning. Haskell Garrett and Garrett Wilson. Those are big receivers right there. Haskell Garrett, the defensive lineman. All were supposed to have big games in the national championship. Did not really see that from any of them. So we'll see what happens and how they can perform in this year and maybe take their team to a championship. Number 2 recruiting class in the country, a very good recruiting class, picking up a lot of 5 stars. Last year, 2020, 7-1 national championship loss versus Alabama, obviously, but still very, very promising to be an Ohio State fan with a very strong recruiting class and making the national championship last year. They just, I think, need more experience and their defense needs to get a little better. I don't believe in their defensive coordinator very well, but we'll see what they do there. Number 4, Georgia, as I talked about, JT Daniels is coming back, James Cooks, and Jordan Davis. So their offense is already stacked, and they're going to have a lot more experience than anyone else will. So we'll see how that helps them. And they had the number 4 recruiting class this year. Kirby Smart's a very effective recruiter, even though they have not been at the top of the college football world ever since the loss to Alabama. He's still been recruiting very well. Gave Nick Saban the second place in recruiting 2 years. The only time that Nick Saban has not been the #1 recruiting class while he has been at the University of Alabama. Last year, 2020, they went 8-2 and won the Peach Bowl versus Cincinnati in a great game. Cincinnati was a very good story last year. We'll see what they do this year with that team. Number 5, Oregon. Notable returning players are Kayvon Thibodeau, Anthony Brown, C.J. Verdell. Anthony Brown, the transfer from Boston College, the quarterback. It was really interesting at the end of the year for Oregon. The quarterback situation was just really a mess, to be honest. Versus USC, Anthony Brown came in and threw a touchdown pass at the goal line. He threw 2 of them, actually. And in the Fiesta Bowl, they were struggling, and they just kept putting Shao in, and they put Brown in, and they're just switching it up every time, and it was really frustrating. But I think Anthony Brown was doing the best out of them. They had the #6 recruiting class in the country, as I spoke about earlier. They did lose to Iowa State in the Fiesta Bowl, but a lot of good things coming from Oregon. Strong young defense. We'll see what they can do there. A lot of good young players coming in as well as a recruiting class. #6, North Carolina. Notable returning players: Sam Howell, Tomon Fox, and Tyron Harper. Not a very good recruiting class for North Carolina, but they do have a lot of experienced players. Obviously, Sam Howell, I think, is a Heisman favorite right now. He did very well at the end of the season last year. Obviously, lost to Texas A&M. #7, Clemson. Notable players returning: DJ Ungalale, Nolan Turner, Xavier Thomas. 2020, they went 10-2 with the loss to Ohio State in the college football semifinals. They got absolutely destroyed, but I think Ohio State just had a ton of momentum and ton of revenge building up for them after Ohio State had lost to Clemson a year ago in a heartbreaking loss for them. The #5 recruiting class in the country. We'll see what Dabo Swinney can do. I've voiced my opinion about DJ Ungalale. I don't think he's as good as people claim him to be, but we'll see what he can do in Death Valley. #8, Miami. De'Aaron Keene returning, as well as Mark Pope and D. Wiggins. They went 6-7. They lost in the Cheez-It Bowl to Oklahoma State in a very close game. They did not recruit very well either. Manny Diaz, I think he's just a young coach, and I think if he gets a few more years in recruiting as a head coach, he'll get some experience and he'll know what to do. #9, USC. I talked about this team. This is going to be a really fun team to watch in the next couple of years. I would not be shocked if USC had won a national championship. Their recruiting class is just so good. They have all the talent. Southern California, great football talent from around there. Getting a lot of players from Mater Dei, St. John Bosco, tons of schools around there just producing talent for them. And it's right in USC's backyard. You got to love it if you're Clay Helton and trying to recruit out there. Notable players return: Amon-Ra St. Brown, Damian Johnson, and Keelan Slovis. They were runner-ups in the Pac-12 last year after the loss to Oregon. They were #8 in recruiting this year. We'll see what they do next year. I think that Oregon and USC will be facing off in the Pac-12 championship this year. I think it's too early to say who will win that game, but I think it'll be a great matchup in the Pac-12 championship. #10, Iowa State. Brock Purdy coming back for another year. Chase Allen and Sean Foster. An awful recruiting class for Iowa State after a great year last year. Matt Campbell did very well in Iowa, but he's got to recruit a lot better than the 59th best class, because once Brock Purdy leaves, I don't know what they'll do. 9-3 on the year. Fiesta Bowl champs against Oregon. That is going to wrap it up for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, please leave a like down below, subscribe, and send this to your friends who love college football. Thank you guys so much.